Viktor Frankl said, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms. To choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's way." This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson. Stay tuned for the next hour as Sue explores the human psyche, what makes us tick, and how to live better, more fulfilled and more meaningful lives. Only on 101.9 High FM.
Hello, this is Sue Jackson on the Finding Human program, and my topic today is the dignity of difference. I did have a guest who was supposed to be coming, but unfortunately had to cancel at the last minute. So you've got me, and you've got a few really great audio clips to listen to. Just having listened to the news and hearing about Iran praising the Hezbollah attack on Israel, it reminded me of something that Shimon Peres had said. And as you know, he passed away in 2016. But what he said was, look, we have existed for 4,000 years, 2,000 years in diaspora, in exile. Nobody in the Middle East speaks their original language but Israel. When we started 64 years ago, we were 650,000 people. So, we are maybe swimming a little bit against the stream, but we continue to swim. And that is, I think, what we need to remember when we are feeling discouraged, when things are happening around us that are feeling so out of control. Let's just hold on to that knowledge that we have existed and we will continue to exist as well. Now, this last weekend, I went on the weekend to Limud with my husband, and it was the most incredible experience. Unless you do not like crowds, which my husband doesn't, and he won't be going again, but I certainly will. There were at least between 600 and 1,000 people by Sunday. Unbelievable talks, and the word limud is a Hebrew word for to learn, and it's celebrating Jewish learning. And that the entire Limud the community is made up of volunteers, which I didn't know. And I found it quite unbelievable, to tell you the truth. They'd been in Durban, they'd been in Cape Town. The presenters were amazing. And every single hour you had at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm counting here, 5 or 6 different talks that you could attend. So half the time I would have liked to have heard all of them, but of course we had to choose. And it was amazing. The other thing that I found was very, in this time of divisions in South Africa, especially against the Jewish community, I found that being with a circle of like-minded people of very different stages of religion and beliefs and what have you, but we were all there together, learning together. It was the circle of people surrounding one another and offering each other comfort in that togetherness, which was so beautiful. And the food was fantastic, and the socializing, if you are the person that likes to socialize, my gosh, it was quite amazing. The other thing that I did realize, and I actually appreciated it, that in one of the biggest eating areas, there was an entire wall of posters of the hostages held in Gaza since the 7th of October. And that was very moving. It was also quite startling, especially as it was in an eating area where we were all socializing, and yet people were stopping, going up, reading out names. And then again, there was a table in the main dining room on Shabbos, which was reserved for the hostages, and it had there reserved until they come home.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
This is Sue Jackson on the Finding Human program. I'm my own guest today. My topic is the dignity of difference. And I was talking about being on the Limud weekend, the Limud being the learning weekend that happens every single year. And it was my first year there. We were with friends, and I was blown away by how the organization as a whole, the talks that were offered, the variety. It was absolutely amazing. Every need was, every person, there was something for everybody. I also want to thank those of you who came up to me and told me that you enjoyed my program. You know, being on radio, we often do not know who we're speaking to. So putting faces to you just means a lot to me, and thank you. I would have liked to have actually spent a bit more time with each of you who did mention that you enjoyed my program, and I would have liked to have asked you, what is it about it that you would like? What more would you like from me? And if you've got any ideas for me, please let me know. You can also WhatsApp me on 061 895 1019. If anyone would like to share what their opinion was of Limud, I would also love to hear it. Not from you, Leon, thank you. That's my husband. You know, there's so many different ways that we look at our lives. And this last week, I was presented with quite a challenge. I went into a bookstore in one of the malls, and while I was there, a young black woman was helping me. She was actually I would say in her 20s. She was delightful. I wanted a particular book on the Holocaust, and she started talking to me about another book that she had just read, and we had this marvelous conversation. It really was fantastic. She shared some of her life with me, and I shared some of my life with her. And I left, by the way, buying 2 books instead of 1. But, she asked me to please come back, and she would even meet me for coffee. So it was a good feeling to walk out of there. However, I was walking down the aisle towards another shop when I had a feeling that someone was looking at me, and I looked up, and there was a young woman staring at me, and with venom in her eyes, and she said loud enough for me to hear. She must have been in her 30s. She said to her children, she had 3 children with her. The one looked about 12, and the others were a bit younger. And she said to them, "She's one of them," loud enough for me to hear. Now, I did have a scarf on, and I do have a bracelet that says "Bring them home," a yellow bracelet. I don't know whether she saw that or what it was that made her realize that I was one of them. And she said it with such hatred and such anger. I must admit that I just looked at her, and I turned to her children, and I just smiled. And I walked on. And I just thought, you know what? I was not going to engage in a fight with her or an argument. There was certainly I could see there was no point in it at all. And my heartbreak was that her children were being brought up to hate the other. And I know it's not only the others that are doing that. I know that our own people are doing it. But, Anne Frank said, in spite of everything, I still believe that people are really good at heart. So for me, I was just so privileged to have spent that short time. It must have been about 15 minutes, I guess, that the person in the bookshop and I got to chat to each other. So I wasn't left just feeling really despair from this woman's hatred towards me. I realized that there are just so many different people in our lives, and we have to realize that, but not respond to all of them at all. The other thing that it also did make me think that when she said she's one of them, I thought to myself, I'm incredibly disappointed with South Africa and our reaction to Israel. And I just feel that it's a great, great betrayal to the Jews of South Africa that we are being told that that Israel's war on Gaza, which we never started, Israel didn't start it, but that the war on Gaza is now being called a genocide war, whereas it is a war to actually survive. And that does make me feel incredibly sad. Plus the fact that if you look around Africa, our own continent, why are our government being so quiet? What about the attacks in Nigeria? The attacks in Sudan? You know, that the other day I was reading that the UN said, it was updated on August the 24th, that in Sudan, 14,000 people have been killed in conflict and 28,000 injured, and there's a huge hunger crisis. So, you know, let's look at what's happening in our own backyard and fix that first before we start pointing fingers at Israel. You can hear that I'm actually quite angry about it. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention was one of my guests, previous guest, Sarah Goodman on Chai FM, a child Holocaust survivor who had lost her grandson, Yakir, in Gaza. She told me, she sent me a message this week to say that she had been at a grandparent support group. And I asked her what it was, and she said it was actually at a bagel place that they all got together. There were social workers there working with them. A couple of the grandparents had very bad reaction, you can imagine. But there were also first responders there to help them. And they were able to talk about it and get support. And she said it was quite an amazing feeling to be there with other grandparents. And then yesterday, I heard Varolene Marks. I was listening to her YouTube, and she was talking about the 29 canines, the dogs in the canine unit that have been killed in the Gaza, Israel-Gaza war. And this is actually heartbreaking to even think. But you know what the wonderful thing is? They have their own cemetery.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
We're now going to be listening to a short audio clip by Simon Sinek called Where Does Courage Come From?
The first four principles that you spoke about, it seems like it's really underpinned by courage, which is you spoke a lot about.
Yeah. And
courage to a lot of people, individually, within teams and within business, is a scary thing.
Yeah.
What would you say fosters courage? Is that an internal thing? Is it innate? Or is that something that you actually seek from the people around you?
Yeah. So in my experience, courage is an external thing. I've had the opportunity to meet people who have risked their lives to save the lives of others. And they didn't have to. They would not have been faulted if they didn't. They were not ordered to. They may have violated orders, in fact, to do so. And I've had the chance to ask them, why did you do it? And almost unanimously they say, because they would have done it for me. And it's the sense that someone has my back that gives me the courage to do something for them. You know, if you're a world famous tightrope walker and you wanted to try a brand new death-defying act for the first time, you're going to do it with a net. It's not your ability that gave you the courage, even though you're really good at it. It's the net. It's this external thing that gave you the courage, and you build it. So I think that to live with a servant's heart, to be that leader, that empathetic leader, what that engenders is that people start to believe that you have their backs, that you would do something for them, that you would sacrifice your interests to protect them, and miraculously they'll do it back. And the only thing that makes you a leader is you're the one who went first. You're the one who took the risk first, right? That's the only thing that makes you the leader. Leader is not because you have the rank. We call you leader because you literally led us. You went first towards the danger, to take the risk. You set the tone. And people may have been cynical at the start and you did it again, and they may have been cynical again and you did it again, and they realized, wait, this is for real. And weird human things happen and they start to offer you the same kind of love and trust back. I believe it's external, and I believe it's based on the quality of human relationships, which means it doesn't happen overnight. Like in the military, they do not build the trust in combat. It's not when they step off the plane with their rifles in arms do they all trust each other. It's in peacetime where they're training and learning to love each other. The Israelis, one of the most successful militaries in military history, the unit that you train with when you're 18 years old is your unit for the rest of your life. So when you're in your mid-40s and you get called back for reserve, it's the same people you trained with when you were 18 years old, because they so understand that the bonds that you form when you're a kid, that they want those bonds throughout your entire military career. They understand where the trust comes from. So I believe that we talk about human beings, we forget we're social animals. You know, there's an entire section in the bookshop called self-help. There is no section in the bookshop called help others. And yet at the end of the day, by ourselves, we're crap. Like, we're just not that good by ourselves. We're not that strong, we're not that clever. But you give a team together, we can lift anything and solve any problem. Not a single person on earth solved any problem by themselves. It never happened. And even if it was their big brain, there was somebody who believed in them, who gave them a break, or funded them, whatever it was. They did not do it alone. And I think it's our ability to foster relationships that underpins the courage we need to do all those difficult things.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
Hello, this is Sue Jackson on the Finding Human program, and you've just been listening to Simon Sinek talking about courage. And it reminded me of a story that I heard the other day. It was on one of my sites, my social media sites, and it said that, I'm sure this wasn't his real name, but this is really a story of spontaneous courage and determination to save his people. I found the story incredibly uplifting. Avichail was asleep in his home on the 7th of October. He was home from holiday, straight from active duty. He woke up to the sound of sirens and realized that there was an attack going on somewhere. He checked his phone and he heard about terrorists that were infiltrating neighborhoods near the Gaza border. He ran to his laundry room where his wet uniform was drying out, and he put on his still wet uniform. At least it was clean. He grabbed his gun and ammunition. He had no car. He thought there might be buses. There were no buses. So Avichail ran by foot for 13 kilometers to Zikkim, the nearest community under attack. He entered Zikkim. He fiercely fought Hamas terrorists. He killed many, thereby saving so many lives in the neighborhood of Zikkim. After this, he entered Gaza as part of the ground operation and spent many months in Gaza. He has been promoted to an officer. I think this is an incredible story of spontaneous courage. And Aristotle said he believed that courage was a virtue, a marker of moral excellence. And he said that the courageous person feared only things that are worthy of fear. Courage means knowing what to fear and responding appropriately to that fear. Well, if you look at Avichail, he knew what he was fearing, definitely. He knew what to fear, and he responded to that fear. And Aristotle said it isn't just whether you face your fears, but why you face them and what it is that you fear. And what he was seeing was that there was something much greater than him that was calling him to respond. And the IDF reservists out of Israel were, at the time of the 7th of October, amazed everybody. They flew back, they came back in their droves, hundreds of them, some of them getting a free flight back to Israel because they wanted to be there for their comrades. Israel called up 360,000 reservists after the Hamas attack. And many of the Israelis were abroad when they did get this call up, but they rushed to find flights. And there was a story of some that were on their honeymoons. Others were studying abroad. Many were building their lives in foreign countries. But when Israel called up its reservists, even when they weren't called up, the response was swift and overwhelming. Everyone is coming, said Jonathan Steiner, who flew back from New York, where he works for a tech company. He flew back to join his old Army medical unit. He said, this is different, this is unprecedented, the rules have changed, he said, and there is no saying no. Now that is facing the courage and walking straight into the storm. When sometimes things feel so incredibly overwhelming, and we need to just, at the time, take one thought at a time. What I did realize on this weekend in Limud, that so many of us have family, children, grandchildren, cousins, uncles, aunts, brothers and sisters who are living in Israel. And everyone's feeling it. And courage involves vulnerability, and I feel that we as Jews in South Africa have a chance to also step up and have our voices heard. If we've got a chance to speak out, we have to speak out. Albert Einstein said, try not to become a man of success, but rather to become a man of value. So what is a man of value? A man of value is someone who respects everybody. And it's something that Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, in his lifetime, said so often. And one of his greatest quotes was, for though my faith is not yours, and your faith is not mine, if we are each free to light our own flame, together we can banish some of the darkness of the world. Wouldn't that be absolutely wonderful? Now, going back to Aristotle, he said, more courageous is the soldier who freely chooses to fight, despite having no personal reason to do so, besides honor and nobility. In fact, for Aristotle, this is the highest form of courage. It faces the greatest fear, which is death, for the most selfless reasons. And this is exactly what the IDF, who did just come back, they faced their fears, and they decided to commit themselves to their country. Courage is something that we are all faced with at different times. And I'm wondering if you can remember the first time you faced courage. If you would like to SMS me, please do so on 061 895 1019. When was the first time you were faced with courage? If you look at little children, the way they fall down and get up again and fall down, there's such determination to get up again. I remember actually very clearly the first time that I was told to be brave. And I was 7 years old, and my brother was incredibly ill. And I was told that he would not live to be 12. And at the time, he was 10. So it meant that there was another 3 years before he was going to die. Thank God that the person who told us that, it was a few people who had told my parents that, proved to be wrong. And it's another part of a story that one day I'll tell through faith healers, through many other avenues, how my brother lived to be a lot older and died much later. But I was told at that time that I had to be brave. And I remember crying. I was very scared. And I was told that to control myself and be brave for my brother, to show him that I felt that there was nothing wrong with him. But I remember running home from school. And I was a boarder at high school, but I was at primary school just down the road from us. And I remember running home from school, and the first thing I would do, Selena, my wonderful domestic worker, who was like a mother to me, would be waiting at the gate for me. There were no fences or gates actually in those days, but she used to be waiting outside for me on the road. And I would say to her, is Donald still alive? Is Donald still alive? And that was when I really needed to remember. That's the time I remember when I was first told to be brave. Khalil Gibran says something about fear, which is amazing. But before telling you about that, I wanted to say that courage often, if we look back on our lives, it is often through our greatest challenges, when we are challenged to be brave, to look fear in the face and courageously move forward, that we, in looking back, we can see the opportunities that fear and our courage at the time, actually the doors that it did open for us. For me, it put me into a caring profession. And I've been in the caring profession ever since. And without my brother's story, I probably would have taken a totally different look into it. But you know what? When we walk into the fire, we can come out more determined. Now, Khalil Gibran spoke about fear, and I would like to read what he says. It is said that before entering the sea, a river trembles with fear. She looks back at the path she has traveled from the peaks of the mountains, the long, winding road crossing forests and villages. And in front of her, she sees an ocean so vast that to enter there seems nothing more than to disappear forever. But there is no other way. The river cannot go back. Nobody can go back. To go back is impossible in existence. The river needs to take the risk of entering the ocean, because only then will fear disappear. Because that's where the river will know it's not about disappearing into the ocean, but of becoming the ocean. Isn't that beautiful? That is Khalil Gibran, and if you want to look it up under him, under fear. It moved me unbelievably, that. And once again, I'm sure so many of you have faced fear and moved through it. And Sarah Goodman, when she told me that they were having this grandparents' time to talk about losses, I thought to myself, it takes huge courage. A lot of the grandparents are Holocaust survivors. And now they are facing the loss of their great-grandchildren or their grandchildren. And going to a support group like this is opening up so many areas that they've probably closed off in their lives because they haven't wanted to be there, and yet they are being forced to go back into this time of fear, and look it straight in the face and help one another. And Rabbi Sachs also said, I wonder if anyone who has not known the depths of Jewish suffering through the ages can understand how deeply the desire for peace is etched in the heart of almost every Jew. And this is something that I've heard from my guests in Israel. They are all saying that they cannot believe how as a nation they are pulling together. The divisions that were tearing them apart are now being healed. Well, I sincerely hope they are, because let's face it, there was a lot of division. Courage is something that we all look at very differently, as I said. What might be courageous to me might be very easy for you to do. But I also feel that we need to have empathy in life. Feel others, recognize other people's pain. Look at what is the difference between shame and guilt. Shame says, I am bad. Guilt says, I acted badly. And what does it do? It calls forth our moral compass. And it says, okay, I acted badly. How will I act next time? It gives us choices. It doesn't cut choices out, whereas shame cuts all choices. It says I'm bad, and it makes us label ourselves. And how often do we hear about families that are not talking to each other? They've cut each other out, and they are maybe living with this shame, saying I'm bad and my family doesn't like me. On the other hand, if they are feeling guilty about it, they have a choice to change what is in front of them. Thank you, Craig.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
Hello, this is Sue Jackson on the Finding Human program on 101.9 High FM. If you'd like to WhatsApp me, please do so on 061 895 1019. We're now going to hear an audio clip by Abby Lammers called The Circle of Compassion.
The term human is more than just a designation of a species. Unlike how being a Bos taurus implies cowness or being a Phoenicopterus roseus implies flamingo-ness, being a Homo sapiens doesn't imply humanness. No, being human is something more than that. So, what is this humanness? Well, it's a function of what I call your circle of compassion. The circle of compassion is simply the range of people that you care about. For something like a tree, something incapable of complex thought, that only extends to the tree itself. As complexity increases, the range also increases. A duck cares not just for itself, but also for its offspring. An elephant might care for itself, its offspring, and the other elephants in its herd, maybe even all of the elephants it's ever met. But humans, well, humans are something special. Humans have the ability to expand their circle of compassion to encompass not just their children, not just the people they know, but all of humankind. And we don't stop there. We have the capacity to care about all of the creatures on our planet, present and future. To be human, to have humanity, is to have an infinite circle of compassion. And yet, all of us are guilty of transgressing that circle through acts of hatred or violence, whether deliberate or accidental. Every time we shun another human, our circle of compassion shrinks a little bit. When we destroy our environment or neglect our neighbors, we become a little bit less human. That's why human is more than just a species designation. It's a goal, it's a virtue, but most of all, it's a responsibility to ourselves, to our planet, and to each other.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
Hello, this is Sue Jackson on the Finding Human program, and you have on 101.9 High FM, you've just been listening to an audio clip, The Circle of Compassion by Abby Lammers. And she talks about the goal of compassion and of humanness and the circle of compassion. And she says the goal is a virtue. It's our call to become responsible, to respond to what life is asking of us. What she did say, which I don't agree with her, she spoke about a tree that is almost inanimate, that doesn't look after its offspring. But actually, we've got this huge pecan nut tree in our garden. I think I've mentioned it before. And it was saved from being felled, as I've mentioned, because you do not, in the Talmud it tells you do not cut down a fruit tree. It's actually until you replace it. But we were going to put up a tennis court, and this pecan nut tree happened to be about a meter within the court. So we never did get the tennis court. And the tree has been rewarding my husband ever since, with thousands upon thousands of nuts every single time that it starts dropping its nuts. But you know that this pecan tree relies on other pecan trees in our garden. So obviously it's for pollination or whatever. But also if you read about trees in different forests, you see how their roots intertwine with one another to keep them upright, to help them survive. So even trees care for one another and have compassion and empathy for each other, which I think is beautiful. Rumi also said, be a lamp, a lifeboat, a ladder. Help someone's soul heal. Walk out of your house like a shepherd that helps its flock. I love that. I love that thought of walking out with a purpose of making a difference in our lives. And I printed out a lovely thing which said, which step have you reached today? And at the bottom of the staircase, this is a staircase going up. At the bottom, there's a very sad-looking little picture of a little stick person saying, I won't do it. And then the next step, I can't do it. And then the next step, I want to do it. And then the next step, how do I do it? And then another step, I'll try to do it. By this stage, these little stick figures are smiling. The next one says, I can do it. And the little stick figure's got its hands up in the air. And the next one says, I will do it. And the one that reaches the top says, yes, I did it. Isn't that what life is asking us to do? We can start at the bottom of the staircase, and some days that's exactly where we feel like being. I know that I myself have been certainly in that time of real depression and sadness and feeling, it's just too difficult. And saying that I won't do it, wanting to just pull the duvet over my head and stay there. How many of you have felt that way? I know for those of you who have shared it with me, a lot of you have felt that way of just wanting to stay in bed, not face the day again. And yet what happens? You get out of bed, you face the day, and often you make a difference in someone's life. And I really do believe that this is what we're being called to do now. A lot of people in our country, quite a few are of the younger generation, the 40-year-olds, are immigrating. Some younger than that are going off to university in America and wherever, and Australia. And those of us who are left behind, there are a lot of people who are really feeling this loss, the fact that their grandchildren are going and they will not have that influence or that connection with their grandchildren again. And I was thinking about it the other day. For those of us who have got children overseas and whose some grandchildren born there, we miss out on that time of the little children's lives. You know, all the little milestones that the children go through. On the other hand, for those friends of mine whose children have immigrated when their grandchildren are older, are teenagers already, they have built up a relationship with these children. And it's incredibly hard to let them go and to know that your whole life is going to change because you're not going to be doing things with these grandchildren anymore, whether it's lift schemes or taking them to go and buy something, whatever it is, just spending a Shabbos with them, a Friday night, a Saturday lunch. Those things change. So life at the moment is really challenging, all of us. So, and when I say all of us, I don't mean just the people who've got children living overseas, but everyone is feeling the pain at the moment of what's happening in Israel. Certainly, I haven't met anyone who is not feeling empathy when they see the Gazan citizens leaving areas. Thank you, Craig.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
This is Sue Jackson on the Finding Human program on 101.9 High FM. You're about to listen to a short audio clip by Rabbi Jonathan Sachs on the dignity of difference.
It seems to me that in the 21st century we are going to face again the problem that humanity last faced in the 17th century, when the face of Europe was scarred by something like a century of wars of religion. And again today we are coming to a situation where, as Samuel Huntington put it, we're in a clash of civilizations. And once again the Christian West and the world of Islam are clashing, as they did in the Crusades, and as I say, as Christianity did within itself in the 17th century. And we are going to have to come up with a solution. And the solution cannot be the solution that was in the 17th century, because there they dealt with it by secularizing power. Now, today you can't secularize power because conflict has gone global, and many of the people wielding power are very religious indeed. The world is desecularizing. And therefore, we are going to have to do it from within the religions themselves. To put it bluntly, either religion is part of the solution or it will be a very large part of the problem. So how can Jews, Christians, and Muslims do what they have failed to do for so many centuries? Learn to live together. And that is when I coined the phrase, the dignity of difference. Somehow or other, we worship the same God, and yet we hate the fact that other people worship God in ways that are different from us. But what if we took God seriously and said maybe God is bigger than religion? Maybe God is worshipped by me in my way and by you in your way. And maybe all our prayers converge in infinity, the infinity we call God. One way or another, we are going to have to learn the dignity of difference if we are to live together in a century in which our powers of destruction have grown so great that either we live together or, God forbid, we will die together.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
Hello, this is Sue Jackson on 101.9 High FM, the Finding Human program. My time is running out very quickly, but I just wanted to say that I read a wonderful article called Resilience in Crisis, and it's how Emunah, which is faith, and the Israeli solidarity shine amid trauma. And it said that we observe Tisha B'Av, a day that marks the breaking apart of the Jewish nation. We would do well to reflect on how our people today, under the darkest of circumstances, take care of one another. So this came out on the 13th of August, and it said that many people, many of them have close friends and family who go off to war. Many have lost people that they care about, and many know those who are or have been held hostage in the tunnels of Gaza since October the 7th. And this particular group of women are running this group, and it says that it would have been natural if all of us in Israel had spent the better part of the past year hunkered down in our own houses with our own families, secluded in our sadness and pain, waiting for the worst to pass. Yet that is very far from what our country Israel has experienced. The spirit of Israel and the Israeli people has held strong and steady, despite everything, despite trauma, darkness, the love and care we have for one another, and our strength and resilience remain steadfast. And this, I felt, was very important to talk about today, that this people who have been evacuated from the north of Israel, from the south of Israel, and have not been able to go back to their homes. They have been incredibly traumatized, but there are so many groups out there offering each other comfort in this time of need, and it's amazing. And if they can do it in Israel, we in the diaspora, we owe it to our people in Israel, our brothers and our sisters, to stand by them in their time of need, to hold our flags, our Israeli flags, up high and say, this is who we are. We are proud of who we are. We are proud Jews. We might all be different, but we are proud. And that came across very clearly to me on this Limud weekend, that I really recognized that we were all from so many different branches of the religion, and yet there was a deep respect for one another. I would like to end with this Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, who passed away, by the way, during in the coronavirus lockdown, not from coronavirus, but in the lockdown. And he is greatly missed, but his wisdom certainly lives on. And he said, when we shed tears, let us at least thank God for the courage and the greatness of the people of Israel. We would rather have the state of Israel and the condemnation of the world than, God forbid, no state of Israel and the sympathy of the world. Israel Chai. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Vusi. Thank you, Makundi. You will be listening to a song by Rascal Flatts. It won't come through on the podcast, but it's called I Won't Let Go.